Go. Okay. All right. Any Chicago Bears fans? Any Chicago Bears fans? All right. Got one or two Chicago Bears fans. Walter Payton. What do we know about Walter Payton? What do you know about Walter Payton? Do you know who Walter Payton is or was? Huh? Well, until what's his name from Dallas took over. He was in the lead for what's the guy's name from Dallas that played it? Yeah. Anyway, and Walter Payton was a goal-driven person, but he was also a great team member. And Walter Payton accomplished all of his goals that he set for himself in the NFL. I was in Chicago doing an international conference, and part of their entertainment was they had Walter Payton speak over at the Navy Pier, and I went over and heard him. What a dynamic guy! It was about 3 or 4 years before he died. But anyway, Walter Payton accomplished all the goals that he had set for himself in the NFL except one. Anybody know which one he did not achieve? No, they won the Super Bowl. He didn't score a touchdown in the Super Bowl. He didn't score a touchdown in the Super Bowl. And if I remember right, they were playing the New England Patriots. They were down inside the 10-yard line, and everybody in the stadium, everybody on his team, and everybody on the Patriots team knew one thing. Walter Payton wants to score a touchdown in a Super Bowl. They knew that was one of his goals. He had told them it was one of his goals. And if anybody remembers the play, they faked the ball to Walter Payton, and they handed it to the Refrigerator Perry from Clemson. And the Refrigerator Perry walked in a hole that was about as wide as this table. There was nobody there because they were all keying on Walter Payton, which takes us to number 6. If you're going to be an effective team member, you have to be willing to sacrifice for the team. Sacrifice what you want for what's good for the team. And Walter Payton said it afterwards. He said, I'd rather be on a Super Bowl winning team than to have my personal goals met. From a personal standpoint, I heard this a couple years ago. Sacrifice is giving up something you love for something you love more. Sacrifice on a personal level is giving up something you love for something you love more. And it's not always easy. Okay, just kind of glance around the room for a minute. So look at everybody around the room. Okay, well, just kind of got a shot. Just kind of span the room, look around. And this is the 7th one. Everything that you do or do not do affects everyone else on the team, whether they know it or not. And it affects them in a positive way or a negative way. Everything that you do or don't do. Well, I'm not returning this phone call. Well, I'm not doing this. Everything that you do or do not do affects everyone on the team. Oh, if I just don't do this, if I just don't close that right, if I just don't get to this today, it won't matter. They'll never know. It doesn't matter whether they know or not. But everything that you do or do not do affects everyone. And again, it affects them in a positive way or a negative way. If you really like team and want some team insights and want a good little, what I consider a light read, and it's on that reading list that I gave you. It's a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by a guy named Patrick Lencioni. He's written a lot of books. I've heard him speak before. That was the first one that he came out with. And if you serve in any team capacity anywhere, at church, on a civic group, in this organization, you would probably benefit. It's a little fictional book on the team, but he said there are 5 dysfunctions. One is the absence of trust, and when we don't trust somebody, we're not truthful with them. Another one is fear of conflict. I can't tell you that because we might. And then there's no commitment, and then there's no accountability, and then the results are impacted. And I have yet to see anyone read that book that says it applies to us. There are 5. Now, some dysfunctions apply and some don't. But I'd recommend that you maybe take a look at that. Okay, team building and team maintaining insights. In other words, what can you do? Again, I'll start with this. You can't have a team without a leader or a manager or a supervisor. And you can't be a leader, manager, or supervisor unless you have a team. Should be just that blank one right there, Jim. Not a lot of lines on this one. And your role as leader, manager, supervisor includes these things, but they're not limited to them. You're the trainer. You're the trainer of your people. You're the equipper, and it's giving them what they didn't bring with them. You're the developer. That's what happens in the pros and in college, right? You got the best of the best going from high school to college. You got the best of the best going from college to the pros, and they get there and they got a coach. You're a coach also. You develop them. You hold them back. They put him in too soon. They should have held him back. They should have brought him along. Well, come on. He ran circles around everybody else in college. Yeah, but he's in the pros now, and it's a different game. You're also the encourager, the challenger, and you're the corrector. You have to make the corrections. Let me give you an acronym I use for coaching. You can just write it down. The C stands for competent. You have to know what you're doing. The O stands for optimistic. The A stands for affirming. If you want to read a book or look at a book that's a long, slow read, and maybe you can just find it on the internet and you can get the cliff notes of it. It's called Shackleton's Way. Anybody know anything about Shackleton? He was on, anyway. Shackleton was an explorer about the 1900s, and he wanted to go to one of the poles. I don't remember which one, but the ship he was in got stuck in the ice. And it's a story about how he had, 200-some people, and they all survived like 6 months on the ice. They said that he was awake when they went to bed, and he was up when they got up. And he brought humor to the thing. They killed a seal because they had to have something to eat. But before they ate the seal, they played seal soccer or seal ice hockey or whatever. They kicked it. He was humorous. He said this. He put the PhDs with the carpenters and had them working together. The one thing I found out interesting that he did, they had to go across they had some small boats, and they were filled with people, and they had to go across these flow areas to get from one piece of ice to the next. And he thought, well, do I put all the people with a negative attitude in one boat or all the people with a positive attitude, or do I just mix them together? He said, nope. He put them all, the positive people in one, all the negative people. He said, if I'm going to lose one, I'm going to lose all of one. I just got to deal with one after that. And he wasn't wishing any bad on them. But it's a story. It was written by two ladies. It's in your book list. Written by two ladies. It is a very slow read, but he's been on National Geographic on TV and about Shackleton and what he did and how he accomplished it. But he kept them all up. He said there's always another move. There's always another choice. It doesn't make any difference how bad it gets. We're going to do something else, and here we go, and here we go. Great communicator, great team builder. It's worth at least finding something about on the internet, but affirming as well. The second C stands for caring. And the third we already talked about, honesty and humor. That makes for a good coach. Tony, can't remember the guy's name. He coached at Arizona State. He coached at Arizona. Somebody, one of the football coaches I know, went to a conference where this Tony guy spoke probably 20 years ago, and they brought me back a little cassette tape. He said they went to the big house. They went to Penn State to play them. He said Penn State had way better players, way more of them, 107,000 people. And his running back, and I can't remember the guy's last name, but his running back was named Liggy. And so they get the ball kicked off to them first. They get tackled at the 8-yard line. He said, our best running back, Liggy, is in there. Want to hand it to him. He said, so we hand the ball to Liggy. Liggy fumbles the ball on the 5-yard line. He said, Penn State runs out. They get on the field. He said, Leahy is barely off the field. Penn State one play into the end zone. He said, 18 seconds gone from the ball game. He said, Leahy walks over and got his head down. He said, Coach. Tony looked at him. He said, hey, Leahy. He said, man, he said, there's 107,000 people in this stadium. They don't know whether we did that on purpose or not. He said, what? He said, no, they don't know whether we did. He said, after all, Leahy, he said, well, but 18 seconds ago, nobody had any momentum. He said, oh, Coach. Leahy gained 176 yards that afternoon. They lost the ball game, but he didn't break his spirit. He didn't jump on him. He didn't say, oh, you dummy, you fumbled, da-da-da-da-da-da, because he knew what kind of character that the young man had. So coaching him. You have to know your role, and you have to know the roles of the other people. And part of that is expectations. People will live up to your expectations. Did you know that? We all respond that way, don't we? Think about the person or the people that you're around from time to time that you think don't like you, or maybe in fact they don't like you. Okay? Are you on your best behavior? No. Because you don't like them either, right? I mean, you don't like me, I didn't like you first. Anyway, we do that. I've got a friend of mine that I know, we've got children the same age. I don't think he likes me, and I really do. We're nice to each other, but now I've got another friend of mine, and I literally wish I was 20% of the person that man thinks I am, and he's known me for over 40 years. And I told him that. I said, I wish I could be 20% of what. Now, who do I act better around? The first guy or the second guy? I can't wait to get away from the first guy. I'm just going to be nice. I got to go. Second guy, I'm going to say, man, I'm going to spend a day with you. I'm going to spend a day with you. People will live up to your expectations. They just will. From your children to the people with whom you work. You expect the best out of them is the best way to get the best out of them. And you say to them, what was it, Buck Rogers that had IBM? Or that was president of IBM 20, 30 years ago, I guess this was. Guy made a $10 million mistake. Guy that worked for him made a $10 million mistake. What do you think happened to him? Nothing. Most people say, I fire him. Buck Rogers called him and said, hey, man, I know it was a mistake. You learn from it and don't do it again. And here was his thinking. In his book, here was his thinking. We can make it through one $10 million mistake, but if we fire him, and he knows what not to do now, and the next guy comes on and do it, I don't know if we can survive the second $10 million one. Okay? Now, you might say, well, that logic is funky. Well, maybe it is, but I can promise you it works. Well, you make two mistakes and you're out of here, or whatever. Not if you learn from them. Now, if you got some kind of jerk, misfit, or whatever, they got to go, and I understand that. But team building is just like the fairways, guys. You got to keep doing it. You got to keep doing it. Day in, week out, week in, whatever. Questions or comments on team building? Well, it requires communication. Let's take a break for a few minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll go through some communication. Or a session that talks about communication. To be effective, you've got to know about leadership. You've got to know about personalities. You've got to know about team. You have to know a lot of things. I think as we go through, we live in a communication age, don't we? I mean, come on, all the stuff that we got, we can get to people, and I don't know if we're necessarily doing any better as far as effectiveness is concerned. Look at the first thing right there. It says myths about communication. Myths about communication. Number one is it's easy. It's easy. It isn't. It requires time, effort, energy, and work as we go through this. Well, if I just write it down and send it out, they'll get it, won't they? I mean, come on, it's in black and white. How can they mess it up? This came from a newspaper out of the former Soviet Union. I've had it for 20 years, so it was back in those days somewhere, probably in the 70s or the 80s. And what they printed in the newspaper was the work schedule for the country for the Christmas holidays. Are you with me? Work schedule for the company for the Christmas holidays. And here it is. Because Christmas Eve falls on Thursday, this day has been designated a Saturday for work purposes. Factories will be closed all day, with stores open a half day only. Friday, December the 25th, has been designated a Sunday, with both factories and stores closed all day. Monday, December the 28th, will be a Wednesday for work purposes, and Wednesday, December 30th, will be a business Friday. Saturday, January 2nd, will be a Sunday, and Sunday, January 3rd, will be a Monday. Now, the person that wrote it understood it. It was as plain as day, right? Okay, but it doesn't always go out. Some unclear writing examples. Unclear writing examples. Here we go. Mrs. Jones, this was sent in to some go. What we got? See, go ahead. Okay. Thanks, Kathy. Mission accomplished. Communication. I think these were sent to the welfare department, some government agency. This is my 8th child. What are you going to do about it? Mr. Jones has had no clothes for a year and has been visited regularly by the preacher. I cannot get sick pay. I have 6 children. Can you tell me why? I'm forwarding my marriage certificate and 5 children, one of which is a mistake, as you can see. I can't read anymore. Anyway, but I did get a list that was sent to the Washington Post of made-up words. Like I told you, I like made-up words, and while they're made up, we can understand them, and I think they make sense. Some of you may have heard some of these. One is intoxication. Intoxication. That's the euphoria at getting a tax refund which lasts until you realize that it was your money to start with. Anybody from West Virginia? Good. Okay. Reincarnation. Coming back to life as a hillbilly. Anyway. Boson. The substance that surrounds stupid people that stops bright ideas from penetrating. The boson layer, unfortunately, shows little sign of breaking down in the near future. Graffiti, vandalism, spray painted, very, very high. There's some I can't read, or some I won't. Anyway, hepatitis, terminal coolness. Okay, so, but it's not easy. Effective communication is simple, but it's not easy. The golf swing's simple, isn't it? I mean, come on, isn't it? You get your feet the right width, you get your weight the right way, you bend over at the waist the right time, you take your hands, you grab the club right, you take it back where it's supposed to be, you move your body away. That is easy, but it is not simple. Everything that's easy isn't simple. The second one is there's a number of times you can say something and people will finally get it. We talked about that some a little bit, I think. But there's some kind of number that's magically out there that if I say it this many times, they'll finally get it. No, you just keep saying it until they do get it. Number 3, Miss, and we can do pages, but the third one is that there's one way to effectively communicate, and it's the one that works for me. Thank you, Kathy. And the fourth one is probably more frequently heard, excuse me, than any of the rest of them. And the fourth one is this: communication breaks down. We've probably all known people that have gotten separated or divorced or whatever. And well, why did that happen? Well, communication broke down. Ladies and gentlemen, communication does not break down. Not if you have any kind of relationship. If you pass somebody on the street that you've never seen before and you just walk past them, there's no relationship, so there's no communication there. But communication doesn't break down. If I do not go home tonight, and I do not call my wife, and she does not hear from me, have I communicated with her? Yes, I have. I've left, I've gone, something happened to me. If you haven't gotten a Christmas card from a friend, a relative, or a former neighbor in 5 years, and they have not gotten one from you, have y'all communicated? Absolutely you have. They don't care about you anymore. They're dead. You're dead. Something's wrong somewhere. We are always communicating. Now, we're not always communicating effectively, but we're always communicating if there's any kind of relationship. We're always, the people with whom you work, look for the expression on your face when you show up in the mornings. And you look for the expression on theirs. We're always communicating. Take just a moment and write down a couple problems that you think you have internally or externally communicating with National Golf Management. And then I'll ask you for a little bit of feedback. Maybe I can answer a couple of them for you. And if not, maybe we'll answer them in the material we're going to have. Okay, what are a couple? If you can keep writing if you are, but what are a couple? What? Give us something. Some of them probably will be the same, but what? Problems you have. Go ahead.
I've got a weekly staff meeting every Monday, and obviously not everybody works 7 days a week, so I do an agenda every Monday. We go through the agenda, and if you're not there, I expect everybody to look at the agenda. If you're not there, come see me if you've got any questions.
Okay.
And 9 times out of the 10, I don't hear from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Typically when they do, it's something that was on the agenda that I'm assuming either your coworker told you or you didn't have a question, or I'm trying to figure out how to get better at that.
We got a section in here on assumptions, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. So, anybody else?
Interpretation, especially in written communication. I had a perfect example of it today. I sent a colleague of mine what was intended to be a congratulatory note in an email saying, well done. Now on to the next 10,000.
Right.
I meant it in that spirit, but of course when you realize that if you're on the other end and if you're just reading it, you could take that totally differently. I guess really the bigger point is what you say to a person, what you say to someone face to face can be interpreted totally differently than if it's over the phone, and even more differently if it's in an email, and even more differently than if it's in a text. So how we properly interpret communication.
Yeah, the great part about written communication is that it creates a record. The weak part of it is you may feel really good, and they might be having a bad day, and they might not read it the way you intended it at all. I've got a couple clients. One of them, he thinks you do nothing but email. I mean, nothing but email. And he'll email clients, and he'll email some of the people in his company and make them mad. And I said, man, sometimes you just got to call. You just got to call and kind of see what. But face to face gives you even more feedback, and that does create problems for us. But the first step is to be aware that it can create problems. By the way, I'll just give you this. For me, this is personal. I write very little in sentence form anymore, for a couple reasons. One is people don't read. Okay, if what I really want to make a difference with or an impact on or whatever is in the second sentence, they're not going to get it. I'll say, look at the following, and I do bullets. Number one is they don't require whole sentences, and you can just do phrases, just bullet, 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 bullet. And people get bullets. People, for the most, they seem to get them better anyway. What else? Problems with internally or externally. Gosh, it would be good if what?
One of the things that we're trying to overcome with being multi-location and different shifts and different operating hours is an effective way to communicate to all employees, whether it's like an internet or cell phone text or something like that. And it's really hard to get the word out to everyone, message.
Yeah, and Horry County just switched. Did y'all get the phone call this week? Okay, if you don't live in Horry County, you didn't get it. But if you live in Horry County, we got 3 phones at our house, 2 cell phones and a landline. What used to be a landline. But anyway, they called to say that we switched to code red from the previous codes, and we needed to learn about that because the previous codes weren't as usable as the new codes or whatever. Red usually denotes something's wrong. I don't know what the other colors were, but we switched. What else?
I tend to be I'll email and just put people on, copy people on it, just to encompass as many people that it might touch, be it lodging or golf or whatever. But the reply all to everybody can create 20 emails in a day, and I think we all struggle with, couldn't you just pick up the phone and get this over with in one phone call versus reading 20 emails because 5 people chimed in 3 times, 4 times.
I think to add on to that point, we just have so much email communication because, to Benita's point, we're at different locations. When it's management facilities, clubhouses, 2 corporate locations, so we have a lot of email communication that becomes at some point white noise. It's just so much it becomes overwhelming.
Now again, another case for bullets. I want you to know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want you to know bullet, 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 bullet. That's it. Okay, anybody else? One of the things I want you to know is this, and I didn't say it in these words, but we talked about it, and it's this. Everything you do teaches, and everything you do communicates. Everything you do teaches, and everything you do communicates. Sat behind a guy Sunday at a restaurant, where he was in the next booth. His back was to my wife's back, and they came in and sat down after we did. There was a man and his wife and a son and a daughter. Well, the guy came in, and he was looked to be a little bit, well, he was a little bit younger than me. Anyway, younger than me, he had his head shaved, and he had an earring in each ear. Fine with me, not my ears. Anyway, and I looked, and when his son came to the booth, who looked to be about 14, guess what his son had? Same earrings, each ear. Everything we do teaches, and everything we do communicates. By the way, just FYI, military came out, the government came out. There's tattoos below the elbow and below the knees are not acceptable in the military anymore. Anything above the shoulders. Just came to me as a communication kind of thing. Okay. All right. Ineffective communication at the top of the next page. Didn't get the message on time or in time, got the wrong message, got the message but misread its meaning, didn't listen or pay attention, others didn't listen or pay attention, didn't read the policy memo instructions, etc., didn't communicate when I should have, acted on wrong information or misinformation. So based on the above, what would you guess, and it would be nothing more than a guess, what would you guess that ineffective communication cost National Golf Management per year as a percentage of gross? Whether you know what gross is or not. Whether you know what the gross number is or not. What do you think as a percentage of growth that ineffective communication... By the way, it's there, I can promise you. But what would you guess? Anybody? Gosh, I really wasn't going to say anything, Petesy, when I almost did, but now you're going to put me on the spot in front of my peers. I don't know if I will say anything or not. What would you guess? Bob? Shoot a guess. What would you think?
The cost of ineffective communication to gross revenue in the company.
That's correct.
I'd say it reflects probably 60% of our gross revenue if we had ineffective. Are you asking if we had or the current?
No, you do have. What do you think it's presently costing you? Because you'll never know exactly. It's got to be a guess.
I'm going to stick with 60.
Wow. Jim?
I was going to say it depends on who's misunderstood.
Help me with that.
Well, if somebody misunderstands me, it's a lot more impact to it than if it's somebody else.
Got it. Okay. Right. But still as a percentage of gross, what?
Or said another way, my mistakes cost a whole lot more than somebody else's.
Sure. Yeah. Because of various levels of responsibility and that kind of stuff. I understand that part.
Maybe 20% of 10.
I've been asking that question for over 20 years. The lowest percentage I ever got from a CEO was 3%. And I kind of went, that's pretty low, until I realized they are $1 billion a year company. Ineffective communication was costing them $30 million a year that went to nobody. It didn't go in dividends. It didn't go in salary increases. It didn't go in product improvement. It didn't go anywhere. And the range has been from that number to what Bob says, about 60%. But the point is there's a cost there. And so what I'm going to attempt to do is give you some tools and insights this afternoon that might...
Don't ask me why I thought that, for crying out loud. I mean, you couldn't have set you up any better.
No, I mean, it was...
No, he's asking you should say, why did you think...
Why?
Yeah.
Good. Sometime I'm slow. Go ahead. You still got the why.
Go back to your original, part of the second segment of your original opening, of communicated about what we're offering people, and we're offering it beyond golf, right? So the impact, we watched our revenue per round drop significantly over the last decade, right? And there's a lot of mitigating factors. But if the communication from my office to those that serve our consumers isn't precise and accurate on what we're trying to deliver to that consumer, I can tell you that we currently maintain a good portion of the market share. 38 to 40% of the market share is within this confines of this company's walls as far as the business of golf. The remaining 60 is our inability to fully communicate. That's nirvana, right? We'll never own all of the golf. But if everyone was communicating too accurately on how the customer, from the time we sell them to the time we handle them, what the reason behind that is, we wouldn't have to be talking about 40% market share.
Yeah. You can increase leadership, management, personalities, team building hinges a lot on our communication abilities. Anybody remember the value jet that went down in the Everglades? Nose first and the tail stuck up for a while. What was it, 110 people or 210 people died? Anybody remember that? Huh? Wait, what was the cause of the crash? Fire from? Oxygen canisters caused a fire, and the pilot and the co-pilot, da-da-da-da. Ladies and gentlemen, the cause of that crash was ineffective communication. Oxygen canisters do not go on a passenger plane. The people putting them on didn't know it. They weren't marked accordingly, and the pilot and the co-pilot didn't know it. They'd never taken off. In Kentucky, a couple years ago, one Sunday morning, 52 people on the plane, 51 of them were killed. Okay, you remember that one? Small jet went in. The tower was supposed to have 2 people in it. It had 1, and he went to the bathroom. They had renumbered the runways and resurfaced them and extended one and renumbered them, and the pilot and the co-pilot didn't know it, and it never lifted off the ground. Most plane crashes are caused by ineffective communication. My wife had torn meniscus surgery on one of her knees, and Joe Jarrett, one of the orthopedic surgeons, Joe's a friend of ours. We've known he and his wife since they moved to Myrtle Beach. I mean, he knows us. He's not some strange doctor. But when she went to get, any of you had that? Any of you had any surgery on knees or whatever? When she went to do that, they gave her one of those Sharpie markers, and she had to write this leg and sign her name to her leg. Come on, Joe, you know her. You know it's the left leg. You did it. You got the x-rays. No. Ineffective communication. It costs lives, and it costs business. And that's not to scare you, folks. That's just fact. That's just fact. Didn't get it, put the wrong fuel in the wrong this, put the wrong, y'all have had it, I know you have. You had somebody that did get the right mix of the whatever goes on the grass or whatever, and that part kind of burned up, and then you had to go out and do something else and whatever.
Landmark did,
Do what?
Look, it happened at Landmark the other night.
I heard it on the news, but I didn't hear all the details. What?
It was a mixture of acid and chlorine.
Acid and chlorine, yeah. And hazmat people had to come, and people had to go.
People hospitalized.
Yeah, well, I just forgot. I didn't know. I didn't know you couldn't pour those two things together. I mean, the space shuttle that went up and blew up, it was the O-ring. Miscommunication. It freezes at this, and it separated, and it did that. Again, what I want you to know is there's a dollar cost and a business cost to ineffective communication in national golf management. And what I hope to do is give you some tools to maybe lessen that. Can't make it all go away because we're humans. I mean, we're just going to make mistakes, and sometimes we're just going to miss it. Effective communication is sending and receiving information or messages that produce the desired results. Sending and receiving information or messages that produce the desired results. So who's responsible for effective communication? Everybody. But let me give you this, and this might sound a little strange to you, but if you will take total 100% responsibility for effective communication, you'll be a better communicator. I can't tell you the people I run into. I've worked with school teachers before, and they said, I'm teaching, they're not learning. And I go, if they're not learning, you're not teaching. Now, does that mean everybody's going to learn the same? No, that's not what I'm talking about. But if you take total response, instead of I sent it out, it was clear, and they didn't get it. If they didn't get it, try again. If they didn't get it, try again. If you'll take total responsibility for that, you'll become a more effective communicator. So what does that look like? Let me give you... Sometimes we take ourselves too seriously, and I found this. Just some questions that I think add to communication. What happens if you get scared half to death twice? Just some food for thought. I drive way too fast to worry about cholesterol. I plan to be spontaneous tomorrow. And then how do you tell when you run out of invisible ink? Anyway, just some things to think about. Okay, effective communication. There are 3 steps for the sender, or 3 things that apply to the sender, and 3 to the receiver. The first one to the sender is the idea, thought, trigger, desire to want something to happen and or get done. I mean, we're walking down the street and we see somebody that doesn't see a car coming about to step out, and we yell, watch out. That was the trigger. Sometimes we've been thinking about things that we know we need to get a message out because we want certain things, we want people to be aware of things, or we want people to act or react in a certain way, or change prices, or change. But something is triggered from the sender. So step 2, or part 2, it is encoded. That is, they put it in their vocabulary. The third thing, it is sent. And in today's world, we've talked about it. It's email, It's face-to-face, it's a phone call, it's a text, it's a tweet, it's a Facebook thingy, it's fax, it's snail mail, it's something, but we send it. So that's something that triggers, I need to do. I want them to know. I want this done. I want them to be aware of. Something triggers it. Then we encode it. Then we send it. The receiver has the following. It's received. They got the memo. They heard the phone call. You saw them, whatever. Then it's decoded. And then there's an action, a reaction, a response, a reply. Something happens as a result of them getting it. They go, oh, I got it, or oh, I'll go do this, or got a clear picture? I mean, that's simple, right? Sender does 3 things, receiver does 3 things. That is effective communication. So it says there, at which of the elements can effective communication break down? At which of the elements can effective communication break down? Of those 6. Any one of them, absolutely. But the 2 most common are the encoding and the decoding. Kathy, you're laughing. Why?
Because Jim has this wonderful thing of saying Kathy speak, because sometimes we're in meetings and I'll say something and he'll look at me and have no idea what I just said. So I'll say it a different way and he'll say, why didn't you just say that in the first place? Make me try and translate Kathy speak.
So you have to understand. Yeah, it's vocabulary, it's education, and for the most part, it's experience. My guess is, and maybe not so much with National Golf Management, but my guess is that y'all have some internal language somewhere in some department that will talk about a form or a format or a procedure or something that's initials or numbers or what. What do you have?
We can't start it.
Tell me you have to kill me, right?
IBS, ETS. We use acronyms for
We're
everything.
Alphabet City.
Do what?
We're Alphabet City. We've got acronyms for everything.
Yeah, I mean, you got them. And somebody coming in that's new to the company, new to your department, step 1 is they got to learn the acronyms. I mean, what is that? I was in the military with a guy. I was in Turkey for a year and a half, and his pay got messed up, and he wrote his wife in California and said, send me $100 ASAP. This is snail mail days, okay? This is back in the 60s. She wrote him back, and she said, what does ASAP mean? She didn't know she wanted to send him the money. She didn't know how to send him the money. But anyway, yeah. So the encoding, y'all could use the acronyms you use, and somebody like me could sit in on the meeting, and I go, I don't have a clue what that means. Y'all could encode it. I couldn't decode it. Okay? All right. Questions on that? Anybody? Okay. 10 things for effective communication insights. 1 is listening. Listening. Listening is the highest compliment that one person can pay to another person, just to listen to them. It's vital to communication. It takes time. Listening takes time. And you don't only listen to the words, but you listen to the meaning of the words. What are they trying to communicate? And there is a difference between listening and hearing. Hearing are sound waves just hitting your eardrums. Did you hear me? Yeah, I heard me. Yeah, I heard you. What did I say? I don't know. I wasn't listening. I heard you, but I wasn't listening. Okay, so just I'll give you a few minutes a few seconds to stop writing. So just listen for a minute, okay? Just listen for a minute. Here we go. You're driving a bus. It has 36 people on it to start. It goes 1.6 miles, stops, 3 people get on, and 8 people get off. It goes another 2.3 miles, and nobody gets off, and 6 people get on. It goes another 3.2 miles, and 18 people get off, and 11 people get on. It goes another 1.8 miles, and 5 people get on, and 3 people get off. Okay? Now, how old is the bus driver? How old is the bus driver? Nobody? Nobody. Some people were figuring mileage. Some people were figuring people on the bus. And what did you miss? And if you go back and look, what I started was with this. You driving a bus. The bus driver's your age, and you missed it because you started assuming, well, he wants to know about people. Well, he wants to know about how many stops. Well, he... I love you, Jim. You need to come with some more with me. You always got it. You always have a good reply. Anyway, yeah. But, and if that happens in this little setting, what's happening when you have a meeting? You missed the front end, right? So what you do, or what you begin to do, is this. You can say things like, what did you just hear me say? That's fun. Because what you said and what they heard you say oftentimes can be different. We'll get to something. Number two moves into that as well. Paraphrasing. Any of you paraphrase more by nature? Somebody says something to you and you go, well, so what you're saying is? Or do you mean this or that or whatever? The people who do that, and if you learn to do it, it will simplify all areas of your life, to include all relationships. Because what they said and or meant to say and or thought they said versus what you heard may not be the same thing. And if you act on what they said or thought they said or what you thought you heard, you may be acting on some misinformation from what they really meant. So what you're saying is. Now, to do that, you have to listen the first time. And in my opinion, let me tell you what can happen. You could have a small tape recorder, or you could pull out your cell phone, okay? And Kathy's going to say something to me, and I say, and she says it, and I say, so what you're saying is, and I play her back. It's her voice. She just said it. And I can promise you 7 out of 10 times or more when I say, so what you're saying is, and she'll go, oh no. So the first thing that paraphrasing does is it clarifies for them and for you. So what you're saying is, any of you know a guy named Stokes Graves? Any of you know Stokes? Yeah. So Stokes and I go way back. Like way back. And he will not let you get away with anything. Play golf with Stokes, and I said, I don't know if I need to hit a 5 or a 6, and I'll choose a 6, and I'll get back in the car. He said, so what you should have done was hit the 5. Is that what you're doing, Petesy? He will not let you get away. He will make you clarify almost to an irritating standpoint. But I can tell you what, his communication is always clear. And when he asks me, is that what you meant, it makes me rethink it. So there's clarity on it. So what you're saying is. So what, who was it? So right here. No, Judy's back there. Right. Cat, help me. You told me about the can and the can. Yeah, came up to me and said, had a teacher in the 4th grade that said, when I said can't, it just flashed back to her because the teacher said can't means won't. And I'll never hear can't the same way again because I logged that in. But to add clarity to, the second thing it can do is it can confirm what they said. Not only does it clarify, it confirms. You want me to, and if we're not careful, we will share everything almost at the same level. You go to someone that works with you or in your department and you say, I need this, this, and this done. And if they would learn to paraphrase with you, do you mean all of that done today? No. I just want the top one done today. You can do the other one next week. Oh. But if they don't clarify with you and or you don't clarify with them, they go in, and then you go back to them, well, why didn't you get this other stuff? Well, you gave me those 3 things. Communication gap, ineffective communication, not doing. And the last thing the other thing that it does for you is it gets commitment from them. So you're going to be there at this time. So you're saying you can't come in or can't do this at all, or you're saying you will do whatever. The fast food places have finally found this, haven't they? I mean, they do it in a couple ways. First of all, and they used to not have it. Anybody remember going to fast food maybe 15 years ago? And you squawked, and if they're hearing as bad as I'm hearing, you don't know what they said, they don't know what you said, and what you get in your bag is not necessarily what you thought you ordered. Now they do what? They put it on the screen, they ask you to confirm the screen, and they say it back to you. Why do they do that? To clarify, to have happy customers, to eliminate ineffective communication. And sometimes they still don't get it right. Okay. The third one is tone of voice. Our tone of voice affects our communication, doesn't it? It can express our emotions, our moods, our attitude, whether we're happy or sad or mad. You have those telecommunication people call you, usually about the time you're getting ready to sit down to supper. Okay? Do they all sound happy most of the time? Do they sound happy most of the time? You know why? Because the bigger companies have those people sitting in little cubicles, and what do they have, Kathy?
Mirror.
They have a mirror in front of them. Why? Tell them.
So they can see if their voice is smiling.
So that they can smile, so that their voice sounds happy, because you have talked to someone in the last year or so, or someone has talked to you, and the response has been, you really sound happy today, or why are you so happy? They couldn't see you, but they could hear it in your voice. Okay? Because I can tell you, if you speak with a smile, it sounds different. It just does. You can't fuss at anybody when you're smiling. I told you I didn't like it. It won't work. It doesn't come out. Smiling makes a difference in your tone of voice, and people reply to that. By the way, by a show of hands, and come on, participate this time. How many of you are happy? How many of you are happy? Okay, let me give you a reminder, ladies and gentlemen. If you're happy, remember to remind your face. Some people go around, you happy? Yeah, what about it? Anyway, okay. Do what? That might be your happy face. I'm reading a book entitled Happy this week, and what the guy said, he said, we're born and we've got, it's almost a default position. And some people's of their happy area. And you can get real happy, but you go back to that. And some people have high, some people have low. And he told about what research was done at what university and that kind of. I just thought it very interesting, because everybody doesn't experience the same level of happiness. They just don't. Okay. The emphasis on words. The words that you emphasize when you speak can change the meaning of what you say. Your emphasis on words can change the meaning of what you say. Let me give you a simple little example. Simple short sentence. Here goes. I didn't do that. What does that mean? It means what it says, right? I didn't do that. It just means that. How about if I say it like this? I didn't do that. What does that mean?
Somebody else did.
Okay. Emphasis on words, right? How about if I say it this way? I didn't do that. What does that mean?
You did something else.
I did something else, and somebody else might have done that. Okay? Our emphasis on words can affect the meaning of what we say. Speed. On average, people speak at somewhere between 125 and 250 words per minute. Now, if you're from the deep south, 125 might be really high. And if you're from New York City, 250 might be kind of on the low side. But for the most part, we speak at 125 to 250. And here's where the gap comes in. People can hear and process 350 to 600 plus words per minute. And I've been there, and you have too. At some point in time, you were at some meeting somewhere, hopefully it was not a company meeting, but you were at some meeting somewhere in school or something, and you really wanted to know what that person was saying. You were interested in what they were saying. But they kind of talked like this. And after about 15 minutes, your mind is going, wonder if I'm going to play golf next week. Wonder if it's going to rain next Thursday. Your mind is going somewhere, right? Part of that is because you can process it faster than they can say it, and they kind of lose you. The other thing is our attention span, based on research, cycles about every 15 minutes. That's why if you go to a good movie, something every 15 minutes is going to happen. It's going to be boom, it's going to change this, it's going to change that. It's to keep you interested. By the way, for those of you who have little children, don't know if this is fact or not, but I heard it. They said a child before they're 15 years old or 14 years old, their attention span is equal to their age plus 1 in minutes. So a 3-year-old has about a 4-minute. 5-year-old has about a 6-minute. Don't know if that's true. But the point is, when you're speaking to someone, and the other thing is, sometimes we have too much information. I mean, it's just, you have to go, what did he say? I don't know. What did she say? I didn't get it. Heard it all, read it, but I didn't get it. Questions on speed or emphasis on words or tone of voice? Got it. Go ahead.